And then the eclipse tomorrow. It was like the perfect song. Thank you. We will sing together the Lord's Prayer and our meditation hymn, followed by meditation with Reverend Mo and her message entitled Embracing What Is.
So let's just stay in that consciousness of thoughts are our prayers. And it is so true. So we open our heart and our minds to the indwelling presence, the very presence of God. So we just breathe. And we visualize our heart and our mind opening to learning and growing. For our spiritual beings, we grow daily. For we see our mind and our heart opening to all the possibilities, all the good that awaits us, all the joy. We see our mind receiving all that God has in store for us. We see our mind opening to the possibilities of the all-knowingness, the clarity. For we know deep within our soul that there is nothing but God. So we allow our minds to see God everywhere. For God is in the midst of us. For we see this clarity. For we know that the sun will rise tomorrow and will set today. And as sure as we know that there is the presence of God within and all around us. For God resides everywhere. So when doubt creeps in, we remember God. We remember the all-encompassing goodness of God in our life. And when our pocketbook seems sparse, we remember God is our source. For all things come from God. And when we start to question our path forward, we get still and we seek out God through our prayers and through our thoughts. We see the answers to our good coming to us in clarity. My mind and my heart are open to learning and growing. My mind and heart are open to learning and growing. And we just sit with this statement, knowing it is a prayer. My mind and my heart are open to learning and growing. I am open. My mind is open, and my heart is open to learning and growing. For my prayers are thoughts, and our thoughts are prayers that are answered by God. So we let go. We let go of worry and concern, and we let God be our way shower. We allow that inner dwelling, that all-knowingness of God to lead us, for it will always lead us to our highest and possible good. For I am open and receptive. My mind and my heart are open to all that lays ahead for me. For assuredly, it brings me to my good. My mind and my heart are open to learning and growing. And I embrace this truth of my being. For I learn and grow more about God every day. My mind and my heart are open. And so it is. Amen. And so it is. Amen. I'm always afraid they're not going to come back when I step down. Don't leave me. So I open with a joke. A father brought his daughter to church. He sat at the very front row so that she could properly witness the service. During this particular service, the minister was performing the baptismal of a tiny infant. The little girl was taken and observed that he was saying something and pouring water over the infant's head. Turning to her father, she asked, "Daddy, why is he brainwashing that baby?" Yeah, through the voice of babes. Today is a part 2 from last week for our affirmations. Last week we talked about denials. And so last week we opened our minds to the understanding that denials are about not denying withholding from you, but rather denying what is not true about you. And so Emily Katie tells us that the saying over of any denial or affirmation is a necessary self-training of the mind, which has lived so long in error and false beliefs that it needs this constant repetition of truth. We need to repeat these untruths so that we can grab hold of what is. And you see, so right now we're in this social environment and this political environment, and sometimes it feels like I'm being brainwashed. Sometimes I feel like that the press is just pounding me repeatedly with things that I really don't want to hear. And yet I'm hearing them, and it's hard to escape from it all. And so I start to pick up these things and start to vibrate those kinds of energies that I don't want to make it go away kind of thing. And so I'm reminded of the denials, that there is no evil, that there is no way that any good can ever be taken from me. But I have to repeat them in order for it to unmask all the other repeats that are handed to me. And I have to be really selective of who I hang out with and who I want to spend time with, because we're bombarded with this negative stuff. And so affirmations, along with denials, opens the mind and the heart to what is really true, rather than what others perceive it to be true. I was sharing with somebody yesterday that, it's a funny business, the news business. They get paid. They get money to tell us what is. And they get more money if they tell us the bad news. There's no money in good news. Bad news pays. And so it's not in their best interest, in their stockholders' best interest, to give us anything other than bad news. So, and yet we'll turn it on. We're in a repeat pattern of, it's 6 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock news, and we turn it on. It's 10 o'clock, before I go to bed, I want to hear the news. And I've always called it the death report. You find out all the people who've died. In this incident or that incident, and I'm like, I'm going to bed with that? Let me pick up a spiritual enlightened book and go to bed with that in my mind, and not the horrific episodes of someone else's life. Now, does that mean I don't have compassion? Does that mean I'm not considerate? Absolutely not. It means that I'm making choices about what I want to feed my mind, what I want to feed myself. Because if I'm open and receptive, do I want to feed it all that negative stuff? Because, just like a child, if they're open and receptive and all they hear is this negative stuff, they start to think it's real. They start to think that that's what is, when there's so much more, so very, very much more. So today we're going to talk about affirmations. There we go. There are 4 affirmations. Just like there's 4 denials, there's 4 affirmations. And these affirmations put us in a state of clarity. Put us in a state of, oh, wow. What if for one moment we actually believe these affirmations and espouse them in every aspect of our life? What a difference our lives would be. So Emily Katie tells us that there's 4 of them. Some of these you're very, very familiar with because we say them in the service. Affirmation number 1, God is life, love, intelligence, substance, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresent. Wow. What if we were actually to believe that in all of our affairs? Every time anything came up, this is what we affirmed. The all goodness, the all presence, the all power of God. What if we were to actually incorporate that into our lives? Not just when we need it, thank God we can even think about it then, but in all aspects, everywhere, as we go through. A quantity of God made manifest or visible through a form. See, we're the incarnate of God. We are made in the image and likeness of God. And so some religions will tell us that's not possible. That's blasphemy. For God is only God and you can never be God. Not true. Not true. In unity, we believe that you are God incarnate with your thoughts. And the more clarity you have about your thoughts and who you are, the more radiance you have. The more aura around you beams. And the more people come up to you and say, I want what you have. Because they see this shining within you. They see your heart and your mind wide open because you trust God in every aspect. You believe that God is everywhere. You see God in other people. You see that radiant light. And you choose to see that rather than the other stuff that sometimes becomes so prevalent. We see God in them. Because God is everywhere, all-powerful, omniscient. He knows everything. He's better than Santa Claus. He knows everything. And the good news is he doesn't have to keep a list. Because he knows you're already perfect just as you are. Are we spiritual beings growing? Absolutely. Absolutely. We find ourselves believing in something other than God, and it turns our corner away. And all we have to do is steer the car back into this realization that God is life, love, intelligence, and substance. God is all-powerful. God is everywhere, and God knows everything. God knows what you need before you know it, and he knows what's best. But we will struggle. We will push and pull and tug and demand that we get what's ours from life. When God says, chill, hang in there, girl. It's already yours. Be patient, be filled with love. See the life force in everyone, rather than choosing something other than that. So when we see each other, we see God in them, and we see the goodness and the wholeness. Because is that not what you want them to see within you? We want people to see God within us. We don't want them to see our sorry side, the side we don't tell anybody about. We want them to see the joy and the impact that we have with each other and with ourselves. Affirmation number 2. I am a child or manifestation of God in every moment. His life, love, wisdom, power flow into and through me. I am one with God and I am governed by his laws. What are his laws? Classes are taught for hundreds of hours just on that. What are God's laws? The one we talk about a lot is that God is everywhere present. Our prayers are answered. Our thoughts or words are prayers. What we give our attention to grows. There's a balance between giving and receiving. These are all immutable laws of God. And so we say that if I am allowing God to flow through me, then all that happens within me is smooth sailing. I have a flow about me that just walks patiently, quietly through my life, because I know that what's happening in my life right at this moment is exactly what I need to further my expression of God, with no hesitations, because we are in the flow of God, and God is moving us just as fast as we'll let him. And so we get to choose how fast do we want to go. And when we pull back and we hesitate with God, God says, okay, when you're ready, let me know. And then we get pushed along a little bit more. And so the more we become open and receptive to all that God has in store for us, the easier our life is. Not harder, even though we're experiencing some magnificent growth spurts in our spiritual understanding. It is God that is pushing us ever so gently through this valley. And we get to embrace it, or we get to fight and snug it. And you get to choose, and that's the beauty of this human experience. We get to choose the experience we want. Do we want to push and pull, or do we want to go in with the flow? And we get to choose. And sometimes we have these eclectic moments, and it's just smooth, like that was easy. And we go, why don't we do that more often? And then something else will come up, and we'll push and pull and snug, and no, don't make me do that. And we get tied up again. And we get tied up in the human experience, prolonging the experience of fear, which our denial says there is no need to fear, for God is my source. So when we start to worry about how our purse is going to be filled or how our job is going to be managed, we tend to pull ourselves into the human sphere, looking for a human answer, when in fact, there's a God answer waiting for you. There's a God experience. Number 3 affirmation, I am spirit, perfect, holy, harmonious. Nothing can hurt me or make me sick or afraid, for spirit is God. And I cannot be hurt or made sick or afraid. I manifest my real self through this body now. You see, we've been brainwashed into thinking that our bodies will get old. And they will if you believe it. It's in your core. We've been told this for generations after generations and generations, and we have bought the Kool-Aid. Gary Simmons wrote one whole thing, Nothing Can Hurt Me. He wrote one whole series just on that affirmation. No one and nothing can hurt you unless you let them. You see, no matter what happens to us, no matter what, we choose how we want to respond to that situation. We have that power to respond. We can respond in a hurtful way, or we can respond in love and light and go, obviously there's something going on for you. Have a nice day. And we walk away from that discord. But how many of us like the battle? We like the high out corral. Bring the guns. We're shooting them out at noon. Because we want the last word. We want to be right. When God says there isn't any wrong, you're already right. Because you're your individual person experiencing God and love and intelligence through your life. And you get to choose how you want to do that. You see, because then I cannot be sick or made sick or be afraid. So the denial is, I am never afraid. And the moment you feel yourself, the fear come up, you have to ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What's going on? What's going to be the worst case scenario? And most times, your answer is silly. You're afraid of something that is imaginary. But we buy into it. We become brainwashed in thinking that that's going to become our reality. And the more we give our attention to this, the more it grows. And so let's give our attention to, I am spirit, perfect, whole, and harmonious. No one can hurt me. There is no need for me to be afraid or to be in fear. Even in the midst of it, God is there. We have to be reminded to turn to God, because there are so many reasons not to. But there is one almighty reason to turn to God, because that's your source. That's who you are, and all that comes from you is from God. Because if you're made in the image and likeness of God, you have all the attributes of God. Love, compassion, joy, clarity, understanding. You have them all already. We just need to pull them out. And that means we have to allow ourselves to be open and receptive to a different way to get from point A to point B. And the 4th affirmation, God works in me to will and do whatsoever he wishes me to do, and he cannot fail. Now, to me, this is the toughest one. This is asking us to do God's will. If we like what God has in store for us, we're all over it. We move with swift feet. But when we find that the guidance is something that we're not prepared for, or something we don't want to do, we find ourselves turning away from God. We find ourselves literally not even wanting to meditate or pray anymore. Because every time we sit down to pray and meditate, it's the same thing comes up. All you have to do is this. And you go, no thanks. God goes, really? All you have to do is this. And we repeatedly tell God no. And God's like, okay, when you're ready, let me know. And the pain proceeds. And we start to feel an unrest in an environment that doesn't seem conducive to us. We start to experience all manner of things, and we then wonderfully turn around and start to blame God for not answering our prayers. And God's like, hold up, kiddo. I did answer your prayer. I bought the boat around 3 times and you denied it. You have to be willing to do God's will. And that's where the open and receptive comes in. Because God's will is the best possible plan ever. The best possible. All of it matters. Because it is bigger and better than we could have ever thought possible when we choose God's will. But the human element of us, that part of us that doesn't believe that God is good, that doesn't believe that there's an all-encompassing God, we start to deny it. We start to take away our good right from us. This, to me, is the hardest part. Affirmation number 4 means we have a choice to sit down and ask God for what we need and then listen for the answer and then do it. Do it. You see, there's a wonderful theory. It's not, one of the laws of God, principles of law. It says that God will never ask you to do something that will harm another human being. He will never tell you to do something so that something is taken away from another human being. Never. If you see or feel that that's what God is guiding you to do, probably check yourself. It's probably your ego. It's probably not the God self within you. You see, because if we are in love with our neighbor's spouse and we want that individual, that's not what God has in store for us. Your guidance is not going to tell you to go take that spouse. Your guidance is going to tell you that you're looking for somebody who embodies that person, the genuineness or the kindness, whatever that person, and you are attracted to that. So your prayer request is not, can I have that person? Your prayer request is, could I have someone just as nice as he is, but even better? And God says, yeah. You know, have you done such and such? And you go, I don't want to. I don't like swimming classes. But the love of your life is in the swimming class. But you don't go to swimming class. Nah, forget it. I don't like to swim. And God keeps telling you to go to the Y. You go, no, I'm good. Every time you sit down to meditate, you get the feeling that you should pull your swimsuit out and go to the Y. And you don't. That's turning down God. And it is as simple as that. And then 6 months down the road, you meet that person that you could have met 6 months ago at the Y. And you're like, really, our paths crossed 6 months? Dang, I remember that. God, didn't listen to God. We postpone our good. And we're very, very good at it. We've practiced it because we don't believe that God is there for us. We believe there's something other than God, something else that motivates us. When in fact, it's God gently pushing us, gently telling us, it's time. It's time to take action. So if your guidance is telling you, and your ego's not the one talking, to take action in your life, trust, affirm that God is leading me to my highest possible good. Do we not want that? Is that not our prayer? With this stuff. Be in the flow of God's good. Be in the flow. If you hit a hiccup in your flow, it's time to regroup. It's time to sit down and meditate. It's time to take a look at what is it. Did you know that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle? That's another immutable law. So when something is placed in front of you, you have the necessary skill set. Now you're just looking for guidance. How do I handle this? How do I manage this, God? And God will give you the necessary tools. He will place those tools in your hands. Did you know that everything and anything you ever need is right in the room you're in? Another immutable law. God is on your side. Put your ego aside. Seek out the wisdom and guidance of God. We are each on an individual spiritual path. We each have our own path to choose. No two people are on the same path. So when we say that we are open and receptive to God, be sure you are, because you will be given the guidance you need, the guidance you're asking for. You're asking for it, so take it. He's sitting there with a shoebox full of all the things you want. He's waiting for you to open the box. And we'll put it underneath the bed over and over again. We might even give it to a charity. Oh, it's not for me. And we give it away. These 4 affirmations are very, very powerful. They seem long-winded, but the truth is that they're very, very clear on what it is you need to do. You get to choose. You see, we're choosing all the time, aren't we? We choose whether we want to get out of bed in the morning. We choose what clothes we're going to put on. We're constantly making choices. And I say make choices to be open and receptive to all that God has in store for you. Do not fear the boogeyman. Make the boogeyman go away. Tell him, I've already given at the office. Leave. You're a child of God, and there is nothing for you to fear. Fear will move you in directions you don't want to go. It will bring you the headaches and all the trepidations that bring us down in life. So your homework assignment is real simple. Really. Don't watch the news. Stay off the news. Nothing good is happening. Nothing good is happening on the news. It is happening all around you, and it is not being reported. Pray for peace, clarity, and understanding for those seeking change. Because it takes two. And where two or more are gathered together, there God is in the midst of them. Pray for peace and clarity and letting go of those things that no longer serve us. Do not allow yourself to be brainwashed. You have choice. Right now, things are a little rocky. But are they? Or are they just being reported as such? I'm not sure. All I know is that God is in charge. And I choose God first in my life, not the news. Godspeed. Amen.